Welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. Tips, tools, and tactics for living a heart-centered life that honors Mother Earth and her inhabitants. The information shared on the Sustainable Living Podcast reflects the opinions of host Marian West, Janice Friant, and their guests. Please use your own discretion in research before applying any information to your individual situation. Now, here are your hosts, Marian and Janice.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Chris and Dawn Agnos, who are co-founders of Sustainable Human. Sustainable Human represents a quest for a more sustainable philosophy and a story based on the interconnectivity of all things. Dawn is an energy healer, a visionary, and an intuitive empath who's using her gifts to help integrate the two intelligent systems of the mind and the heart. Chris is a writer, speaker, and video producer who has created several viral videos that help others see the world through a lens of interconnection to all of life. And he has visited us in the past here on the Sustainable Living, so we want to welcome you back, and welcome to you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to have this conversation because we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff that's kind of happening in the world today. And maybe some of the things that we're not seeing that we wish we were seeing, or that maybe possibly we can help to see in the future. So just off the bat, how have you guys both been?
We've been good. We've been trying to find ways to kind of reinvent what we're doing. This process that we're going through right now as a civilization is really a unprecedented one. Every single person that's born on this planet makes a new record in terms of how many people are living on this planet. So we've never done this before, and that means that we have to try lots of new things and a lot of them probably won't work, and maybe we'll find some that do. But the point is I think we really need to innovate our way out of this, and it's not just innovation from a technological perspective, but also from a psychological, spiritual, and even personal story perspective. So those are the things that we've kind of been thinking a lot about as this new year unfolds.
Yeah, well, that's something I've been thinking a lot about too over the last few years, but definitely now, no time like now, going inward and finding a center when you're in the midst of a lot of chaos right now. It's so easy to get caught up in the news headlines and what people are posting up on social media that's very kind of incendiary, and very divisive. I don't think I've ever in my whole life seen the world as divided as it seems to be right now.
Yes.
It seems that way. It seems that way, especially when we start looking at the way that our groups are interacting. But if you actually kind of unpack that and you pay attention to how people are interacting with other people, I think that you find almost the opposite is true. I think when people can actually get in the space with another person, understand their needs, what's going on, we're all kind of frightened. We all kind of share some of these similar feelings and emotions right now. And I think that actually is bringing individual people together more. Whereas the groups that we belong to are so divisive and dividing of each other. So when we start getting into these groups, these larger groups that have these agendas, and those agendas really may not be totally visible to us. Just the rhetoric is very visible, but the agenda underneath isn't so. And I think that those agendas are really battling each other, and that's what's kind of creating the division in the world.
Yeah, in the meantime, we get all whipped up into a frenzy for stuff a lot of the times that really doesn't really affect us in our day-to-day lives, right?
Yeah, I mean, that can happen. They definitely will point to specific certain issues and ignore other ones that meet their agenda. So I think it's really important when we look at all of this divisive content and media that's happening is that we really need to try to find those hidden agendas behind the divisiveness, because ultimately that divisiveness does have an agenda, and on each side that agenda is different, but neither agenda is really in our interest. So it's where, the more that we unplug from these groups that don't have our interests at heart, then the better the sooner we'll come to the realization that we need to come up with our own solutions, and that the solutions that are provided by these groups that we belong to are never going to be in our best interest, and ultimately are not in the planet's best interest. And we have to change that. And I think it's got to come from the bottom up. I think people have to realize that they have the solutions within them. Mm-hmm. And if we can empower ourselves to believe in ourselves and in the power of our connection and our communities, then we will see some real change happen real fast. Yeah. And it won't be televised. It'll just be happening. You'll just hear about it from your neighbors instead of reading it on the news or something.
And I think that is actually happening. I really do. But I think that the difficulty is that we've really been programmed to look outward for answers. We don't understand this idea of personal autonomy, really. We pay lip service to it, but that's not how we've ever lived. I mean, we've always turned on the TV to see what's the news. We've always looked to our teachers or our elected officials to tell us what's going on in the world. And really, the events that we're experiencing now are showing us that we can't do that anymore. That is not none of those are trustworthy sources of information anymore. So really, the only way that you can get truth is by going inward and starting to develop that intuitive ability, that ability to tell what's true and what's a lie,
This is something where, that Dawn really focuses on with her work, and, trying to help people integrate their feeling and emotional bodies. But maybe, Dawn, you'd like to talk a little bit more about what that is.
I mean, I feel like if you don't have a lot of people that are working in society, they have a lot of pressure. They have a lot of survival anxiety. They're future-oriented thinking because they're always having to stay, 10 steps ahead of losing their house, losing their car, their children's needs. Everyone's staying ahead of where the present moment is offering them the fullest potential. And when we do this, we are living inside of our mind and we're not using the intelligence of our heart. And it creates a disconnection, a duality within us that works against us until we emerge into awareness that we have a subconscious that operates 90% of the time in our lives. And so it's very, very important to understand that the thoughts and stories that are sort of given to you by media are programmed as mind programming in your brain just from watching it. It's just a simple way to program your mind. And what happens is that your subconscious mind holds on to this information because it's not editing. And so if you do focus on the news and the polarization, you'll just experience more and more and more of it as time goes on. And ultimately, it will create your own destruction from the inside out. And the idea isn't to destroy you. The idea is to bring you into alignment with your higher self and your self-awareness that brings you into the knowledge of the eternal knowing. There is a place that you can tap into within yourself that knows the right action. And it's not right action from the mind. The mind wants to tell you there's a right and a wrong. The spirit knows there's an eternal place it's trying to get you to that is in harmony with all life. And so we're experiencing this polarity kind of as a backhanded blessing, if you will, because we can't see it. It feels awful right now, but But when you've been through this process enough of how change is created, you understand that it's a very violent, it's kind of like if you look at the Hawaiian Islands, they've erupted over millions of years and created incredible beauty. That's how we are as well. We're in a stage of eruption right now, and that eruption is here to bring us into awareness so that we become more beautiful beings and more interconnected with all life here on this planet. But the key is we have to focus on our intentions, and we have to know what our thoughts are saying to us. We have to analyze them as an observer, and we have to go inside and know what's creating our feelings. Our feelings are created through emotions and thoughts combined. So if you're not managing your thoughts and your emotions, then you're going to have misguided feelings that can create destruction and violence. And that's really the crux of the time that we're in right now, is to understand how the universe operates, how the morphic field operates, what you have access to in your intelligence systems, and how to use your heart and mind in tandem so that you're operating as an integral whole human being who can't be deceived. It's very important.
Wow, thank you so much for that really clear explanation of the positive side of all of this, which that's the thing. We get stuck in the ugliness and we don't realize that the ugliness is just the process to get us to the other side, which is a much better place than where we've been,
You can't really know beauty, unless you've seen the opposite of it. You can't feel cold unless you felt warm. Everything is in relationship to everything else, and so this is just the fundamental way that the world works. But we aren't told this, about how this is not the education that we receive early on in life.
Right. And like you were saying, Don, what you focus on is what you bring about. So if we are constantly focusing on strife and division, well, we'll get a lot more of that in the future. The key is really to find a way of, first off, like you said, again, figuring out what thoughts that you're having in your mind. To me, meditation has been just so wonderful for me to do this. This is the biggest gift I've had in my whole life, is the ability to realize what I'm thinking throughout the day and then say, hey, I don't really want that anymore. I'm going to switch to another channel that is going to bring me the things that I want in my life.
It's interesting because I feel like I went through this journey. I'm 45 now, and I went through a tremendous life experience that helped me gain this wisdom within myself and my own experience. But what I found interesting later was to say, wow, I as a little girl, I had all this intuitive knowledge about where I came from, the source energy. I mean, I still feel that signature imprint, where I came from and where we're going and why I'm here. I've known that since the age of 3.5 when I saved my mother from suicide.
Wow.
So I was able to do crazy things that my brain wasn't developed to do yet, because I was tapped into the feeling experience of knowing. And so so what happens is when you go through years and years or decades really of trauma, you kind of forget. You sort of I became so, as an empath and intuitive, I became so fixated on others in the world to help them that I hadn't developed self-awareness. And I didn't realize this until my late 30s, when everything came crashing down, and I realized I had no self-awareness around my own thoughts, the emotions in my body that hadn't been healed, and the survival anxiety it created with the stress I was living in the present all the time that never left. And so I had to unify myself in order to become healed, or this was destroying me physically, my health. And I think that's key, because a lot of people, they lack self-awareness, but they want to sort of hide away from that. I think it's scary for people to feel like maybe they have some part in all of it. Even the things that hurt them the most, they can't sometimes accept I gave away my power. I was a part of this experience, and it was here to teach me something. It was here to give me something. And really, it's about self-awareness and maturity and accountability and all these things that converge you into your integrity and your integral self. And when you're merged with your integral self and you're using your heart and your mind together, you're unstoppable. And that's the key, that people in education and higher levels, this information is not new. It's been taught thousands of years ago. And it's nothing new, and it's something everyone can arrive to on their own. But what I found incredible was, even with all of the intuitive psychic abilities that I have, I still lacked self-awareness. So the journey is for everyone, because you can figure the whole world out all day long, but getting into the inside of yourself, that's the challenge.
Yeah, it's the challenge, and it's the key to everything.
Yes.
That is the only way that we really transform this world, is if we transform ourselves. And to do that, we have to become self-aware. We have to become aware of the thoughts and aware of the things that are keeping us stuck. And also, big time, connect with our hearts. This is the biggest thing, I think. I know for me, I was very blocked, very, very blocked with my heart. And I would come across, I'm supposed to be, if you look at astrology and everything, I'm supposed to be the most intuitive people ever, blah, blah, blah. But I was that person who couldn't cry. Like, everybody would be crying at a sad thing. I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd be at a funeral. I'd never be able to cry. And I realized, probably in the last 15, 20 years, that it really was that I had blocked myself, my heart. I'd blocked my heart. And by doing that, that's a big handicap that we have, because that's a big portion of our brain, really. It's really what should be doing the leading of the thinking. Instead, we are all up in our heads, and we think that the stuff that's in our head, our brain, is what has to lead us everywhere, but it almost inevitably leads us to places we don't want to go. The place where we do want to go, we have to get there through our heart. That's what I found anyway.
It's true. And the heart is connected with synchronicity. So the heart is the field in which the universe communicates through you, and you communicate back to the universe, your beliefs. If you believe that you don't deserve something, then the universe says, you're right, you don't, I'm not giving it to you. There is a direct connection to the matrix field. I call it the grid. Other people call it other things. But that's how I see it and experience it, is a grid pattern for me. And what happens in that place is it knows no limitation, and there is nothing that's impossible. And so when you live from the heart and you have complete trust and faith that you will be cared for, your needs will be met. I love the example of the birds, because the birds they're not storing up. They're not, they just every day know that they're going to have what they need. They just go out and they eat when they eat. It's a different type of operating than we have. I think that's a simple, simple analogy, but there is something to that. When we observe the natural world, we see how out of balance we are.
You see animals, right? And then you observe animals, they're not thinking about what they want to do next week.
Right.
Or where do they see themselves in 5 years?
Yeah.
These are all things that are common questions that we ask each other, and we're expected to answer as if we have some sort of plan that we're going to stick to and block everything else out that tries to get in the way of that plan. But we're not even sure if that plan is really going to take us where we want to go, like you said. These plans are generally given to us by society, our parents, our peer group who we want to impress so that we can be liked. Being liked is probably one of the main motivations for most of human actions out there. Whether or not they succeed or not is another question altogether. But, these are some of the things that we really do need to analyze. The reason why we want things, the reason why we do things. This is all part of the self-awareness that Dawn was speaking to just now. and it all impacts behavior, and those behaviors have impacts on ourselves, on our relationships to the planet and each other. And to be knowledgeable about what those impacts are all part of that self-awareness journey that is so critical at this moment in terms of our ability to sustain life on this planet, which is ultimately, what our mission is with Sustainable Human, is to develop those stories and find those stories and help promote the actions that people are engaged in when they are integrated, when they do have that heart, mind, body integration, because it is from that source that the solutions to our predicament will materialize.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
And I was just going to say, we haven't even touched on all the different ways that, like you said, we want to be liked. It's really important. Well, a lot of people understand that we want to be liked, and will use that to get us to do things that maybe aren't in our best interest.
Yeah, I know.
It's true, isn't it?
True.
And this goes back to our why people identify with groups, because if you can toe the line of the group will have a certain set of ideologies and practices, and the better that you're able to conform to the practices and ideologies of that group, the more you will be liked by other members of that group. Mm-hmm. And so we have this concept about being loyal to our political parties. And what that does is it distracts us from the fact that, neither of their agendas, which are both in conflict with one another, but neither of them have our best interests at heart. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the more that we can disconnect and stop feeding them our energy, our concentration, stop letting whatever news article affect our emotional body, and pay attention as to why it's affecting us. Become self-aware as to why does this bother me so much, and what is that feeling underneath? Because when we can tap into that, then we can use that feeling to integrate with our thoughts and our mind and our rationality to determine what is the best action that we could engage in at this moment? How can I apply my unique passions to the world around me? Maybe it's, you want to help elderly people. Maybe it is that you want to grow food around your neighborhoods. Maybe it's that, it could be any number of things. I'm just reminded of this story the other day that impacted me so greatly. This is something that Dawn's helped me over the course, because my background, is very academic, very egocentric, and Dawn was the one who really helped me discover this and begin to integrate this emotional being that is, really me. That's the real me. Mm-hmm. And
I knew him before he did.
Wow, that's saying something.
I always tell him that from the minute we met. I was like, I know your nature. And he's like, I knew his nature. I knew his nature. I knew his spirit self, but he didn't. So it was my work to help integrate him with his spirit self.
Wow.
Because he didn't know it.
And so the other day, I'm sitting in a restaurant. I drive for Lyft now, and so I was pulling over and got something to eat. But I was in a part of town that was pretty run down. And desolate, and where people just don't have their needs met. And I was sitting next to a table with a mother and a father. They were both very young, and from my observation, they seemed poor, and perhaps the guy actually had a gun attached to him, and he had two kids sitting at the table. They're both about 2 years old. And the 2-year-old was sitting, one of the 2-year-olds was sitting in a high chair. And, the mother and the father were looking at their phones, and they were just kind of trying to impress each other by things that they're finding on Facebook. And every time this child moved, though, the mother would turn around and slap him.
Oh.
And the child was just sitting there like, just trying not to be harmed, just trying not to do something that will anger his parents, which literally every little movement that he made they just wanted him to complete. So he would throw things on the ground, and they would act as if he should know better. He's 2 years old, and they said, look what he's doing. He's throwing, humiliating him.
Wow.
And I felt so connected to this child. It bothered me to no end. Now, if the guy didn't have a gun on him, I might have said something, but I really wanted to. And at the end of the day, I came home and I told my wife around it, and I just started bawling my eyes out. And it wasn't just because of this particular individual child, but it's because this type of thing is happening all over the place, because people are not integrated with their feelings, with their feeling bodies. They're trying to rationally try to make money, or try to get ahead, or try to impress this person. And this is all stuff for the mind, and it's taking us away from the very connection to the thing that's the most important to us. Here I am, I'm on my phone, and my child just needs my attention, and they're not doing it, and they're hitting them. And it's just, what is that child going to learn? What is that child going to become later on in life? And you can see how the cycles of disconnection and violence continue because of this lack of emotional integration that people have. Because if they were, they would see that their child has needs. I need to love him. I need to connect with him. I need to hold him. Yeah. I need to tell him that he's good, that he's I need to explain why throwing things on the floor is not a good. I'm the teacher. And we just don't have that. So I felt so connected to this child, but it was really all children in this world. And that's something, again, that if you feel connected to something like that, if you see something out in the world that bothers you, then there's something there that you might be able to do something. There's a reason why you're bothered by that. Yeah. There's something in you that's saying, do something. Yeah. What can you do? Talk to people, learn more, find out, discuss it, And then see what emerges from that. And from whatever emerges from that is going to be something that helps us on the road to a more sustainable world. Yeah. I truly believe that. I truly believe that we're all called to do something unique based upon our experiences in life, the things that we've experienced. There's so many stories, of people who were in sex trafficking, who escaped, and now they're just trying to help others who are also in that area because they know how the negative impact that type of thing can have on a person. Mm-hmm. So whatever you're doing and whatever you're passionate about, that's your calling. That's the thing.
Yeah, and we have a lot more impact than we ever realize because we're so focused on the material, we don't realize that our own frequency, our own vibration, how we are living our lives, are we at ease? Are we feeling happy and joyful in the present moment? Are we appreciating what we have? That has a tremendous impact on the collective consciousness. And I think for me, that is a very big reason why I get up and meditate in the morning. Because I feel very strongly that has a powerful impact on the world. And I think also when you look at people, I don't know, you can tell me if you agree with this, Don, but a lot of people that are very intuitive are saying right now we have opportunities to manifest things like we've never had before. What we think about is literally coming into our reality very quickly now, not like it was in the past. So there's no time like now to really be making sure that what you are looking at and focusing on is what you really want.
Absolutely. It's very important. I agree. I'm not sure where to go on that, but I think you said it all. I agree.
Yeah, well, I guess I use this as a way to kind of focus a little bit on what you're doing with Sustainable Human now, which is facilitating this. You can really help people who want to help the world or do things. So could you share a little bit about what's going on with Sustainable Human?
Sure. Like I said before, we're always trying new things, and certain things work and then other things don't. And so, to be nimble in this process and to try to find new ways of being of service to this higher movement that wants to transition humanity into an ecological species that knows its place within the web of life. And so the way that we want to use this Sustainable Human Facebook page and audience is by helping those people, like I said earlier, those things that people are passionate about, to try to create a more interconnected, interbeing type of world. We want to help them. We want to help them promote their projects. We want to share the success stories. We want to share stories of personal transformation about why you left the corporate world, and the journey that you've had since you did that, and how you're living in the world now. There's so many people here in this world now that are afraid that if they were to quit climbing the ladder, that they would just fall all the way down and be at the bottom with all of the undesirables in the world, right? And so that fear keeps people locked in place and participating in a system, and that most of the time isn't bringing them real joy, and keeps them also locked in their head, like I said, their headspace and their strategic space, and not integrating the emotions of it. Because I think if they did, if people really were aware of the impacts that perhaps some of their organizations were having in the world, the negative impacts, then they probably wouldn't be able to continue doing it. So it requires a level of sometimes emotional repression in order to keep engaging in some of these activities, and even to recognize that this isn't making me happy, because that part, again, has been repressed. And instead we become, dutiful to certain people or to organizations, and we turn ourselves into performance robots that will continue to perform day after day after day for this cause, without ever, checking in with the impact it's having on ourselves. So what we're doing with Sustainable Humans is those people who are kind of going through this process and want to share their story, want to share what they're working on, or have a project idea that they just feel called to do, but aren't sure where to start. We want to try to help them, at least point them in the right direction and connect them with maybe other people or other projects or other resources that could help them to achieve this goal, or at least take the next step in achieving that goal. And when it's ready, we just would love to share these stories, all these things that are happening from the bottom up. One example.
Outside of crowdfunding campaigns.
Outside of crowdfunding campaigns, yeah, that's true.
I will have to say that. We get too many requests to honor them.
Okay.
And I mean, we can talk a little bit more about crowdfunding, because I think a better way to do crowdfunding is really crowdsourcing. Instead of trying to get a bunch of people to donate enough money so that you can go purchase a bunch of things, why not give other people who have skill sets an opportunity to participate directly in your project? And there's a great new crowdfunding platform. I want to plug them right now, because it is by far the most amazing crowdsourcing platform that I have ever come across. And the name of it is called Heroes and Friends, heroesandfriends.com. And it's actually it was developed in the Netherlands, and it's primarily there to crowdsource for your project. So each project has a timeline here and then every story that you tell appears on this timeline, and every resource you request and every person that joins your team shows up on this timeline. So basically you can set up, I need a videographer, and I need a social media analyst, and I need these three other roles, and I put them out there, and I say, here's what my project plan is, and here's what I want to accomplish. And then you allow people to say, yeah, I want to help you with this, and I'll donate my 10 hours a week for 2 months to accomplish this goal. And now you don't need to fundraise for so much money to pay somebody to do that role. And the same thing you can do for physical resources as well. So if you need wheelbarrows and you need dirt and you need, certain things to do your project, then you can have people actually donate the actual stuff you need. Again, this lowers the amount of money that needs to be raised. It includes more people in the project so that you're working together with others, harnessing each person's individual talents and resources. And then you're also creating a different type of organization that doesn't require to pay everybody money, but it's all voluntarily given by each person who says, yes, I want this to happen in the world. This is important to me, and it's not going to make a profit, but it is going to help people, and it's going to help create a better world. So I highly recommend that website for people who are looking to do crowdsourcing of their own projects. But if you need help strategizing on how to do that, then that's the thing that we're available to help them with too.
It kind of reminds me of your Sustainable Human Gift Economy site. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
How does that differ from that?
Well, the gift economy we took down.
Okay.
And it turned out that I don't know if it had something to do partly with the platform or just the idea perhaps wasn't communicated well. But the idea for that community was for people to come together and to source projects, new projects, to give away to the world. So it would be like, you came, Denise, and said, I want to have a sustainable garden in my community. And then other people would join in and try to help you develop that idea. But what was happening is that people were coming with their ideas that they already had, and many of them were capitalistic in nature. So they disregarded a lot of the community guidelines around non-commercial activity. And so they were really just using it as a place to try to get free resources. So unfortunately...
Which is really a key piece, I think, to hover over for a second.
Sure.
Because what we're seeing is, what we saw was exactly what I saw before we built it, which was that people aren't mature enough yet to act responsibly with such a gift. So that is a very important lesson for people trying to break into sustainability. We get contacted from people all over the world who think this huge movement's emerging and they want to be a part of it. And there is a movement emerging, but you must be very discerning, because there are a lot of people with capitalistic mindsets looking to take advantage of this movement. And they're not necessarily aligned with the power being in the hands of the people. And it's very, very important, as a person who knows the intentions of others, that people get that discernment in their hearts clear. Because if you want to be an influencer out there in the world, then you need to have your intention set straight, or you're going to get people that are going to come and steal from you the way we have. We have had to learn to be good gatekeepers of our community, because there's a lot of people out there that are predatory in mindset, and they're seeing sustainability emerge as the new money, the new big money. It's like the new green revolution is going to make a lot of money. And so there's a lot of mindset that's like, well, how do we do it so it's in our best interest, not in the interest of all?
Yeah. Well, and it doesn't help, I assume, that basically what you're trying to do there is something that we don't have any context for. We can't look in our memories and go, oh, I recognize this. We only know this capitalistic system that we've been immersed in for generations. And that's a big stumbling block. I know for me, that was a big reason why Mariana and I started the podcast. I always say, it seems like I say this on every episode, but it bears repeating in a sense that it's very difficult to manifest what you cannot envision. And that's a big reason why we do the podcast. We try to help people envision something different than what we have. So while there may be a ton of people that are predatory and still want to kind of fit sustainability into their capitalistic ventures, there are a whole other bunch of people who like the idea, but their minds keep reverting back to the old ways because they can't envision it yet.
Yeah, that's the key. That's why self-awareness is, we cannot become sustainable without it.
Yeah.
Because we have to fix the mindset within ourselves when each of our conditioning patterns, that we observe how we're patterned and we edit it for our own intention and what we're trying to do for all. If you come from a space, if you are operating with the universe in a way that says, let my work be the highest good for every life form here, let me not be hierarchical over anything, then you have the full support of the universe. That's the difference. When you're operating from that field, nothing can stop you. It's not possible. So the issue is, we are not operating from that field. We're operating, by and large, from a field that's self-centered. And the self-centering is creating, it's keeping us from changing this world. And so many times on the page, people don't understand what our particular mission is on Sustainable Human. A lot of people assume they've come to a sustainability page and they just want to be fed all the best ideas that are happening in the world to maybe capitalize upon. And so, our mission is, okay, we have all of the technology in the world to make our entire planet sustainable right now. So why aren't we? Why aren't we? No one's asking this question. For me, it's like, it's so obvious. So many people come and they say, why are you sharing this philosophy? Why are you connecting us to the interconnectivity of all? Because they don't see that it's not about engineering. Sustainability is about a mindset and a living set and a behavior and an intention space. And everything that emerges from there becomes sustainable. But if you make it all about technology rescuing you, you create more trouble for yourself, more of the. So it's a fundamental aspect that needs to be addressed within each human being. The story level is what we behave. We have all the technology today to make our world sustainable, to give abundance for all. Poverty is something that is built into the system. It is created, it is by design, and it serves a huge function in the psyche of people. It's psychological warfare. People can't see it.
Yeah.
All they see is misfortune. They don't see it's been created, and that's the people have been chosen to suffer. And there is no place they can go. They are serving a purpose for impacting the psyche and creating a drive within us that's subconscious and unchecked, and we stay in alignment with that thing that's taken us off the cliff. And not just us, every life form on the planet, which is, it's a level of psychosis that is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. Well, amen to that.
Yeah.
I don't think that can be stressed enough. And you're right. It's something that is not being discussed, and it is the root of the problem. Totally.
It's just something she touched on here with the poverty thing. Survival stress is one of the biggest things that keeps us from becoming emotionally integrated. When you're constantly having to perform and you're constantly worried about, am I going to have enough money to pay the rent and will I be out on the street next month? It is very difficult to allow. In fact, in order to be able to function in some of those types of scenarios, you do need to block out some of your emotional body, because if you're feeling the pain of the world at the same time that you're trying to, put food on the table for your kids, and you can't do it. You would just crumble and cease to be able to function. So, when I think about, sustainability and we have to figure out a way. And it seems like we should have done that by now to alleviate the majority of the survival stress that exists on the world. What is an economy for if it's not for helping to better meet people's needs? And is our economy actually doing that on a better, is it getting better at doing that or worse at doing that?
Well, you asked the key question, what is our economy for? Okay. To us, we may think it's for the betterment of humans, but really, bottom line, it's only for greater profits. And when we change our objective from greater profits to the betterment of mankind, then we will see all this other stuff change.
Again, and that's exactly what Dawn is talking about in terms of our intention. What is the intention for going out and doing this project? Is it, be honest with yourself, is it to make enough money so that I can, pay my bills? There's nothing wrong with that. We have to do that in this society. But is it going to have the same impact as if I was doing this for the intention of the greater good of all? No, probably not. So, and paying attention to that, being aware, not trying to confuse your business idea with, a better world for all if it's really not that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do believe that we were sold a bill of goods on that. For a while there, the economy became a god, and our religion, our mass religion here. And we believed truly that if we could go out there and make a lot of money, and we were told this over and over again, that if we did this, everything would be great for everybody.
Yes,
But,
that's the idea.
But we're seeing now very clearly all around us that was false. That was a lie. That,
There's a number of assumptions that the capitalist philosophy makes that are faulty. One of the assumption is that nobody would enter into a transaction unless it makes them better off. No one would buy anything
right.
that makes them better off. But does a Big Mac make you better off? You know what I mean? There's so many products out there that don't make us better off, but we still buy them.
Right. Sure.
And ultimately it's because, a lot of people are buying things because they have unmet emotional needs, again, suppressed emotional needs.
Which are manipulated.
They're still there. You still have a need for connection. You still have a need for belonging, whether you're aware of it or not. Mm-hmm. And if you're unaware, then you're highly susceptible to these clever marketing techniques that will associate those products with your unmet emotional needs. And therefore you will think, oh, well, if I buy this $5,000 Gucci bag, I'll feel better. And maybe you do for a moment, but ultimately you don't, because it does not connect. You can't connect to the Gucci bag. You can't, It's not going to talk to you. It's not going to make you feel better. It's not going to validate you.
Right.
And these are the real needs that you're trying to meet. So, this is again how we are co-opted back into this system of perpetual growth, because it's never going to try to meet our emotional needs, because it needs those emotional needs to be unmet in order for us to keep purchasing all of these more goods that we have to keep purchasing every year. So this, again, is why it's so important, why Dawn's work with emotional integration is so important.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing, because I've had an interesting journey as a healer working with people, millionaires in Silicon Valley. And what I found interesting after my time there was how you had people that could literally not spend all of their money in 6 generations of wealth. This is coming from them. And yet they couldn't stop working. And I would always, work with them on that. It's like, what's going on in here? What's happening? Why are you still in the pursuit? Why aren't you at this point giving away your wealth, helping to better the planet, working with, people who can make real change for people who don't have a voice? And what I found was that that hole inside, that ghost that Gabor Mate speaks of, the ghost inside, that's just the hungry ghost. It just devours and eats and consumes everything to feel alive, is a vacuous ghost when you get to that level. And, I remember having a very serious talk with one of my clients who came to me once, and she's worth $500 million, and she's a single woman, and she has, more money than she could ever spend on her own. And, and her take on it was, well, who would feel like I would be irrelevant if I left. I would become irrelevant. And so what you hear is that the ego identification is the only identification as a person that's been developed.
And underneath, she revealed the need that she has. I would be irrelevant. She has a need to feel relevant. Mm-hmm. And so isn't it interesting that our society, the only way that you can feel relevant in our society is perhaps if you make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And if you're not, no one will listen to you, no one cares.
And perform out. And it was interesting because she was a wealth financier. And she said, she had that mindset of, well, I already have the wealth. I have to keep doing better than I previously, it's that mindset of people will only remember the last thing you did. So you have to be doing something spectacular. And I see this mind programming happen in the women entrepreneur community. And it disturbs me to a deep level, mm-hmm. because in Silicon Valley, there is a huge movement of women that are being asked to stand up and speak. And what you see is, by and large, they operate as the men of business that always have. But they sell it in a repackaged way like it's women's empowerment. And it's very violently ill because it is so dysfunctional and deceptive. Yeah. And it's really capitalizing on women and programming them against one another in competition.
Yes.
And it's also creating this guru mentality that disturbs me also as well, which is that someone else has knowledge that's more important than yours. And this is how we give away our power at every level of society, because you think someone knows more than you do. Now, you can learn from other people. You can certainly share wisdom. But at the end of the day, your spirit is speaking to your body to do something unique out of your experiences. And that woman who's telling you,
go do this.
It was interesting. I saw this video this week that it floored me. It was a video of all these millionaires and billionaires, of women entrepreneurs who have made all this money, and they had advice to give to the younger generation. So of course I was curious to see what they were telling people. And every woman on there was talking about their dreams and how they manifested their dream. And what was the dream? What was the intention? Everyone spoke about how they just wanted to sell big. They wanted to go big. They knew they wanted to sell a product for millions of dollars and make millions. That was the goal. The goal wasn't that they had an idea that would help change the world. The goal was to go big and to make tons of money. So if you're approaching life from that level, women have got to wake up. They are being manipulated, and in the most disgusting way. They can't see that they have more power in them that can be used, but they're being leveraged in this corporate way. And it's disconnected from the woman's feeling body.
Oh my gosh, I could talk to you on this for a long time. It's you touched on it.
Spoken about it really does, because I don't hear any women speaking against it. And in fact, there is that's what scares me a lot, is even the spiritual communities. I see this where there's all this guru worship and all this stuff going on. And I mean, hey, that's frightening.
Okay.
Everyone should be afraid of that.
Well, I think we really need to look at what femininity and women have been associated with, what have been some huge strengths, I think, that we have to bring to the table, that basically we haven't. We've tapped that down in an effort to, break the glass ceiling, I guess. We need to outmale the man, basically, in going out there and grabbing the, finding the prey and bringing it home from the hunt. We have to outmale the man on that. And to me, I've never seen that as what the world needs. We don't need more of that. We have plenty of that. We need to bring the world to more of the feminine side. That's the issue that I've always had. True feminism, in my view, is that we bring the world to us. We need to have more collaboration, more communication, more focus on the family, more focus on our hearts and our intuitive abilities, and more being comfortable with just being rather than going out and getting all the time.
Listen, women are 50% of the population of this world. That's a massive number of power. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, men need us to be that feminine energy that can be connected to the earth, be connected to the natural sense of self that slows time down, that says everything is as it is. It's going to work itself through. We are tendering the flame. Mm-hmm. We're growing together. Women do that. Women support each other naturally when they slow down and they connect at that level. It becomes very natural. But when you go into how these women are competing as men, really, in this field. I mean, I used to be one of those women. I worked on Wall Street in my early days. I did 8 years in that career.
Wow.
And, I had a giant ego because I was working alongside people that had crazy degrees, and I had never had one college class. So for me, it was survival and it was intelligence and everything working together, And I got to the point where I realized I got all the way up to the top. We were managing a $750 million fund, 6 of us in the office, got all the way up to the top and realized I looked at my life. I took my vision space and I blew it out. 10 years, 20 years, 15 years. I said, oh my God, this is a terrible track I don't want to be on. It just occurred to me one day. I said, wow.
Why?
Because I read something that gave me permission to let go. And it was, don't sweat the small stuff. And he said to me, he said, just because someone throws you a ball doesn't mean you have to catch it. Mm. Now, I had come from a life of survival. I was born into trauma, into narcissistic parenting, a lot of abuse, incredible trauma, incredible insane situations, homelessness,
wow,
and you name it. We went through the gamut. Different school every year, foster homes from the age of 12. So I was out on my own by the age of 12, pretty much, navigating the world. And because when you go to foster care, nobody is talking to you. They're just feeding you and making sure you have a safe place. And because they're all afraid of the foster kids. Mm. And so very few parents will work with the children themselves. But I never had that. And so my journey was kind of forcing me at every turn to figure it out on my own. And this worked my whole life. I was like, you got to figure out on your own what this world is and how you're going to deal with it. And when I went through and became successful in corporate business, I thought, well, this is it. This is how I get out of my trap. No one knows where I came from here. I just work my tail off and earn the respect of all these men around me, and they're going to take care of me. And they did. But here's the thing. I would have had to abandon and betray myself for the rest of my life to keep that going. And at a certain point, I realized I'm on the track to betraying myself, and this is not going to take me to happiness or the life I want to have.
How is it going to betray yourself by continuing on that road?
It would have betrayed the interconnection I wanted to have with an emotional feeling experience. I wanted to fall in love. I wanted to have friends that I could connect with. In the world that I was operating with in high finance, people were, riding their helicopters into work and very disconnected from the ground level people, which is where I came from, which no one knew. And for me, it disconnected me from what I knew my path was really for. You see, I knew why I was here all that time. Mm-hmm. And so when I had that vision space to see where it was taking me, I knew that that's not why I was here. And I also felt in my feeling body how it would feel. Mm. That's what said, I got to get off this ride as fast as possible.
Wow.
And I did.
Yeah, and you said goodbye to all that money, and now you're happier, seems like.
Yes, much happier, much happier. I mean, I didn't amass any wealth because that I ravaged an illness in my body that almost killed me for 8 years. So I had to survive that and overcome all of that and deal with the emotional repression.
That was one of the...
to really come full circle.
That was one of the events that helped you to realize that you couldn't actually continue on that journey because she developed an autoimmune disease because of the dysfunction that she had to live with in order to perform that work. Mm-hmm. You had to sacrifice everything to it.
Right.
But I think...
her own body and her health, and ultimately she couldn't keep it up.
Yeah.
I was a master at suppression, you see, after living a life like that and having to hide the truth of what I was living I never told any friends that I made or anybody. No one ever knew what I was experiencing. Mm-hmm. And so I had become a master at suppressing and creating duality. Mm-hmm. I was really good at it. I was good at people being like, wow, you're always so happy. You're always so positive. You have so much to give. It was so valuable to others. And this is what gave me a sense that I was at least doing something meaningful in my life. But what happened was I wasn't being good to myself by repressing.
Yeah. And
when you spoke earlier about not being able to cry, I completely had that experience too. I had to relearn how to cry. And I did that by, renting sad movies.
Yeah, I had kids. That's what broke me out of that.
Yeah.
But you brought up something that's really important, I think, and I think a lot of people are going to really relate to your story here, Dawn, and that is when we're not true to ourselves, or maybe we're cut off from our hearts, but our hearts are still there, and they do nudge us. They try their best, and if our brains can't get it, well, eventually our bodies start to shout at us, and that's where we get a lot of our diseases from. It's because of this dichotomy where we're one thing inside, but we're pretending to be another thing on the outside.
Absolutely.
Because we don't know our self-worth when we come from environments where, I mean, you don't even have to come from a shattered environment to not know your self-worth. Many people I worked with in the wealthy, very wealthy circles didn't have it either, because they only knew their worth from their peer group as being their money. Mm-hmm. And in fact, one of my billionaires said to me one day, I'll never forget this, it touched my heart so deeply. He said to me, he was a young man, he was only 32, and he's a very successful man. He says to me, he says, you know, when you're at my level, no one wants to hear if you've had a bad day. No one can hear that. No one can hear how you feel if things don't feel good or don't feel right, or you had something really messed up that happened to you. People stop feeling compassion for you once you get to become a billionaire. And I just thought, wow, to hear that come so honestly from someone having that experience was profound for me. Because number one, it says they have awareness that they suffer. When on the outside world, everyone's saying they could never suffer. Look at everything they have. But they have nowhere to go to heal the pain. So that's where a person like me comes in, because they need a confidant that is private, that can help them go through this process.
Yes.
And help them ingratiate them back into the fold of what's good for all. This person has very good intentions, but because his peer group locked him in to a certain level of performance, it was hard for him to expand beyond it until I was able to work with him and sort of develop some of his ideas beyond that way of thinking. And so there's a lot of things that can come from working with repression. Mm-hmm. And integrating the mind. The mind should really be the constructor. The heart is the guide.
I kind of
to what you want to
saw this thing recently in a video that made a whole lot more sense, but it basically put thought in your mind as one of the five senses. It's like the sixth sense, if you will. Like you have your touch and your taste and your smell and your hearing, but one of those senses is also the mind. So what it does is it kind of puts it on the equal footing. Instead of saying the mind and the thoughts is everything and I'm identified with my thoughts, I say the mind is actually another one of my tools, like smell. I don't let my smell override my whole body. I don't let my taste override my whole body.
Right.
I'm not going to let my mind also override my whole body. I'm going to engage it when it's needed in a particular application, but I'm not going to listen to everything it's telling me because those are the things that I have to understand.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And if you can think of it that way, I'm sure it would be very transformative in, how you view the world. Because we've just, practically deified the brain and not realized how it's led us off on paths that really often aren't very good for us.
It's not our fault. We were conditioned through schooling to behave, right, to identify with our minds and our thoughts. So don't think like, you did something wrong along the way. You probably did everything quote unquote right and ended up with a mind that is overriding your body. So, and it's just kind of taking a step back to say, oh, yeah, there are these other feelings inside and I do need to integrate those.
Yeah. And with all of this, we have to do it with love and compassion for ourselves, which for too many of us, that's a foreign concept. But it's something that we have to develop. And, we're getting to the end of our time here, Chris. And I wanted to, there's a couple of things I'd love for people to take away. First off, could you share a little bit about the Sustainable Human Facebook page and how, if somebody has a project or a story that they would like to share, and by the way, one of the things I think that we kind of danced around here on our conversation was the idea of community and how healing that is. And a lot of us are rediscovering that first online through communities like the Sustainable Human Facebook page, where we can find people from our tribe and, share stories and hopefully get support. But that's a big tool, I think, to get us out of where we are now and to go forward to the new earth that's coming. So I just wanted to highlight that community is a big thing. Having friends, having support, and what you're doing is a very big thing with this. You're trying to support all these people that have projects, sustainable kinds of projects or stories that they have to share. Can you share a little bit about how someone can go about connecting and doing that?
Yeah, very simply. If you go to sustainablehuman.com, there will be a link there with a form that basically asks you a few questions about your project. And when you submit that form, that'll go directly to us, Dawn and I, where we will review that project and get back to you with our feedback. And if we feel like we can help, and then we'll start figuring out ways that we can create some content around your idea and your project and share it with the community, which is over 1.5 million people around the world. So it's not necessarily that 1.5 million people will hear your idea, but they could be exposed to your idea, and then we'll continue to share those projects and those ideas over time, so that if they didn't see it the first time it was posted, they might see it the second or third or fourth time. So it's very simple. Just go to sustainablehuman.com, check it out, and submit your project.
Beautiful. And Dawn, I would love to, if you could share something with us, one or two or how many tips you think for anybody who kind of recognizes themselves in the stories that we shared today, and they want to maybe connect more with their heart, and they want to become, to have that interconnectedness between the heart and the brain and everything. What are some basic steps that anybody who's interested in this could take?
I like playing, I like to make the experience very light and playful for people. One of the steps that I liked, that I developed myself when I was working through all this myself, figuring it out, was this thing that I call better like this or better like that. And what it is when you're not connected to your feeling body, it's not easy sometimes to start off differentiating what your mind is saying and what your heart is saying. And so sometimes you want to present yourself with the dual options in front of you, okay, my mind's telling me to do this, my heart's telling me to do this. So you go into your feeling body when you have those two experiences in front of you, and you say, which feels better to me on the inside? And when you ask your body that, your body will tell you immediately. And that's all you need to know. That's literally all you need to know to navigate your life, is asking yourself which feels better. Because when you focus on which feels better, you're going to get to the place where you were always supposed to be eventually. Everything becomes important on that process. But which feels better? Ask yourself that, because it's so key.
These are some of the tools that Dawn has developed. This is one of the tools, but she has a number of tools that she uses to help people reintegrate their emotional and rational minds, emotional bodies with their rational minds. And she's very shy, but she has a website, dawnagnos.com, where if you have a question about things that are happening to you in your life, around this emotional integration. This is her work. She's there if you wanted to hire her. If you wanted to hire her to be on a call with you, you can do that. But she's also answering questions. So if you have any questions and you want her to answer it, then you can ask her a question on her website, and she will absolutely get back to you. Yeah. And give you some advice regarding your situation, your personal situation, because all our situations are different, right, and yet they all share some common elements. So,
and those questions and answers will be compiled on the website as they grow for everyone to receive benefit anonymously.
Yes.
But for everyone to receive benefit from, because there's a lot of people that are afraid to ask questions, and a lot, they have the same questions others do. So we just want to share that as a resource for people who don't have the financial means to get to someone like me and ask serious questions. So
beautiful. Oh, thanks.
But my intention is not to make myself the guru. My intention is to make you as connected to your knowing. That's the difference with me, how I work. I'm not here to make you a lifetime member for me. That's not what this is about. I don't have that kind of life energy for everyone. So it's really about getting you as liberated and as connected to your intuition and trusting that as fast as possible. That's what this work is about for me. And it doesn't take years. It takes a very short time.
When you're ready.
Once you know the tools, you can do the rest yourself.
Yeah. So important. It's so
take someone along with them on the journey.
Yeah. Well, to me, when I look around at the world today, I just feel like everything is pushing us towards that greater personal autonomy for ourselves, greater personal wisdom. It's all pushing us towards that because we can't look out in the outside world anymore and find those things that are fulfilling, that are really speaking to our hearts. We can only find them when we look inward. So thank you both so much for what you're doing to help all of this. And thanks for coming on the podcast. I hope that you'll come back and, have another discussion because I do believe a lot of people are going to really enjoy this and again, find themselves in it and hopefully find some answers too.
Well, maybe next time what we'll do is we'll do a call on all of these projects that are coming up from the ground up, so after all of you guys come to us and we start really, to share, we could totally just start sharing all of these ideas for projects with everybody else. So that would be a fun call, wouldn't it?
It would. And it would build the community. And again, people need to see more and more of this new thing that we're trying to build so they can envision it, so we can make it manifest faster.
1 second before you go. Yeah. As you said that, it reminded me of a statistic that I just heard from Greg Braden, who said, statistically speaking, it only takes 100 people out of 1 million to make complete change. This is a statistic that's been analyzed and researched by many researchers, and these numbers are astounding when you think about them. 100 people to 1 million to make lasting change. That's big.
Wow, that's huge. I mean, can you imagine if we're all able to shift our focus on what we want to build? Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's coming. Thank you for adding that, Dawn. I really appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for joining us on the Sustainable Living Podcast. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on the Sustainable Living Podcast. For more sustainable living tips, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Join our Facebook group, Sustainable Living Tips, Tools, and Tactics, and follow Marian West and Janice Fried on Sue.